What do you think was the single deadliest volcanic eruption in human history? And I am talking in terms of direct deaths rather than indirect, since the largest of volcanic eruptions can sometimes exacerbate societal problems, cause famines, or even cause diseases to spread at an increased rate. Surprisingly, famous names such as Vesuvius in 79 CE, Nevado del Ruiz in 1985, Pele in 1902, Krakatoa in 1883, or even Mount Tambora in 1815, which caused the infamous Year Without a Summer, do not top this list. And that is despite Tambora's massive caldera-forming eruptions seemingly topping the search results on every single website that lists history's deadliest volcanic eruptions. However, the true deadliest eruption requires us to head away from Indonesia into the tropical rainforests of Central America. Specifically, at a spot 12 kilometers or 7.5 miles east of El Salvador's capital city of San Salvador. There, you will find the surface of the nation's largest lake, Lake Ilopango. You might be wondering why I am mentioning some large lake, and the reason is simple. Lake Ilopango represents the remains of history's deadliest volcanic eruption. Specifically, it represents the low point of a massive volcanic caldera that formed when incredibly large volumes of molten rock were ejected in an eruption dated of 431 CE, resulting in overlying rock collapsing downwards to fill the empty space in the now largely drained magma chamber. And, hence the name of the lake, this occurred at the Ilopango volcano. While Lake Ilopango did exist in some form before the eruption in question, it was notably smaller. Thus, once the collapse happened, both high levels of yearly rainfall and the region's water table combined to fill the lowest point of the caldera. The caldera in question measures a whopping 17 kilometers or 10.6 miles long, 13 kilometers or 8.1 miles wide, and in some spots it is more than 500 meters or 1,640 feet deep. Clearly, for such a vast caldera to have formed, a substantial amount of molten rock had to have been removed, as this eruption in the year 431 ejected around 84 cubic kilometers worth of tephra, a figure more than 6 times the size of the deadly 1991 eruption of Pinatubo and 64 times the size of the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. So, to imagine the level of destruction generated by this eruption, just picture 64 copies of Mount St. Helens erupting right next to each other in 1980. Before Ilopango produced this catastrophic event known today as the Tierra Blanca Joven eruption, the surrounding area of El Salvador represented the southeasternmost corner of the Mayan Civilization. During this period, the Mayan Civilization was in the middle of its classical period, its golden age when the culture had its highest population, extent of power and influence, containing dozens of large cities. This included a population in the 6 figures in the area of modern El Salvador. Much of this population was clustered in or around larger cities such as San Andreas, Chalchuapa, and Calepa. However, plenty of other settlements also existed in between them. So, when the destructive Ilopango eruption finally did occur, what exactly happened? There likely were hundreds, if not thousands, of volcanic earthquakes striking one after the other in the preceding days, only to eventually give way to a continuous tremor which was likely audible. The eruption thereafter started with a few smaller phreatic eruptions, only to be followed by a huge explosion. This gave way to a towering eruption column which soon rose to an altitude of 31 kilometers, but a second portion of the plume rose even higher to altitudes of 49 kilometers or 161,000 feet. As millions of tons of molten rock were ejected every second, pulverized rock, pumice, and ash was ejected high into the air, causing substantial amounts of ash to quickly rain down across the landscape. Then, denser material in the eruption plume collapsed back to the ground, generating pyroclastic flows which raced across the landscape at speeds exceeding 150 kilometers per hour. These incinerated everything they touched, burning all vegetation with several hundred degrees Celsius clouds of death. As the eruption continued, likely for at least a full 5 days, around 100,000 people, largely Mayans, became fatalities. After the eruption ended, this is what remained. Everything in a 40-kilometer radius but up to 65 kilometers away in some directions had been left lifeless, either due to pyroclastic flows or more than 60 centimeters or 2 feet thick of ash having fallen. Yet, expanding outwards, 30,000 square kilometers were covered in such a thick layer of tephra that it made it impossible to grow any crops for decades and in some cases even centuries. As a result, every single regional city was abandoned, with people not returning for between 75 and 200 years. A large migration of survivors occurred to the north and northwest, and in one case, in the city of Carasucia, Mayans would never return as instead a different culture resettled it. This was a major blow to the regional Mayan civilization, which would take some time to recover from. And this all occurred due to El Salvador's single largest explosive volcanic eruption in a whopping 55,000 years. It truly was unimaginably devastating. As a final note, I would like to thank my new patron Freddie Ladd for supporting my work.